This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything. I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony Nippy Ames. And this is
A Little Bit Culty.
Cults are commonplace now. From fandoms to fads, we're examining them all. We look at what happens when things that seem like a great thing at first go bad.
Every week, we chat with survivors, experts, and whistleblowers for real culty stories told directly by the people who lived through them, because we want you to learn a few things that we've had to learn the hard way.
For example, if you think you're too smart to get sucked into something culty, you might be prime recruitment material, and who knows, you could already be in a cult. If you're not aware of your programming, you're probably being programmed, so keep listening to find out.
We'll talk about all sorts of topics on the show, but be aware, this podcast might contain stories that could be alarming to some of our listeners, so please check our show notes for more detailed descriptions and take care of yourself.
Subscribe to our Patreon for Thursday bonus episodes, Q&A, and all sorts of exclusive content. That's patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Welcome to Season 7 of A Little Bit Culty.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to my love.
Before we get into our podcast today, I think Nippy's got a new song that he wants to lay down for y'all.
I have a hit single called Bruh, Bruh.
Inspired by our children.
Inspired by these awful rap songs that come on, and they're all like, bruh, bruh, what you talking about, bruh, bruh, ain't trying to live that life, bruh, bruh. So I kind of hit it. Every time one of those songs come on, I just start singing it to drive my kids crazy. Carry on.
Okay, on that note, welcome back to this episode of A Little Bit Culty. People, we have a bit of a departure once again.
Yeah, mixing it up.
This episode is
But are we?
Well, maybe we're not.
Yes.
Maybe it's standard.
You decide.
We're not talking to a survivor. We're talking to a true crime expert. So this is for all of you true crime fans. We're talking to the wise and the wonderful Derrick Levasseur, a highly decorated former detective and current true crime expert.
You might know Derrick from his podcast, Crime Weekly and Detective Perspective. He's also a panelist on America's Most Wanted, Missing Persons, where he gives the law enforcement's perspectives on investigations. A recent episode featured our very own Sarah Edmondson.
That's me.
Yes.
Yeah, that episode was a wild experience, and I just felt like our conversation, which was at least over an hour, got cut down to 10 minutes. So it was great to dig in a little more with Derrick today. That episode and this episode is about 6 people who went missing after joining a social media cult called the University of Cosmic Intelligence. There are children among the missing, and we hope that doing this episode will raise some awareness about the case, and we will help find them. And for those who did not see the episode, and we will include a link in our show notes, just a couple things about the University of Cosmic Intelligence. It's basically a social media cult, as well as being some in-person events or people living together. We're not entirely sure, but the themes are all over the place, including Afrocentrism, sovereign citizen ideology, science fiction. Jamal claims that Earth is actually named Key, and he's one of the original scientists who built it. He believes he's an extraterrestrial god who possesses esoteric secrets of the planet, and he shares his views via divine downloads. You should check out his social media videos.
You should probably play a little volleyball.
That would just, be the icing on the cake.
Yep. All right. So Derrick has covered other culty crimes as well, like the Vallow Daybell murders, which we touch on briefly on this. We'll also talk about the challenges law enforcement faces when it comes to cults and identifying the abuses of power.
Derrick has so much experience investigating crime. He's got a fascinating career, and we cannot wait to pick his brain. Let's welcome Derrick to the show. Derrick, welcome to A Little Bit Culty.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Such a pleasure to meet you on the set of America's Most Wanted, Missing Persons. That was a treat and also a little bit harrowing. How was that for you to be on the show?
Well, it's surreal because obviously we all grew up watching America's Most Wanted. But for me personally, I hope there's more episodes. I know it was a limited run, whether I'm part of it or it's somebody else. I just think those cases, the cases that we were covering, need more exposure. You know, I love going after the fugitives. That's great. But we know there's so many missing persons cases out there, and many of them are not in the public eye. So unless a podcast like this or a YouTuber is out there covering it, it really doesn't get the attention it deserves, which obviously decreases the likelihood of it being solved. So I just hope that Fox and these other networks see the value in the show and understand that there's a bigger play here, and it's to get answers for these families.
You think America Most Wanted is like the peak show for that? You think? Like, what's the mecca for?
I think Fox is. I think the show could be called anything. I think having the America's Most Wanted brand tied to it is obviously critical because people see it, they recognize it, they trust it, and they trust John. So I think they're more inclined to watch. But I would just love to see in general, to be honest, and I say this now because I'm not obligated by Fox to say anything specifically at this point. I would love to see a competition. I would love to see NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox. I would love to see them all have their own version of this type of show so that they're basically competing against each other. And the benefactor of all that would be the missing people and their families. Obviously, I loved working with everyone we had the opportunity to work with and share those stories. And I guess right now the proof of concept will be, we'll see the impact that covering those cases has. We'll see if they ends up solving any of them.
Here's hoping. I personally, it's one of the reasons I reached out to you, is I felt so invested in the case and the research prep for that episode. I did a lot of it, and I thought our time there was intense and also fleeting. Like there's so much more that I felt like I had learned or put together from a cult perspective. I just wanted to keep that momentum going. So I'm glad that you were available to talk about it, and we can dig into the case. Before that, for our audience who may not be familiar, and I'm sure some will because there's definitely a true crime and cult overlap in the space that we're both in, but tell us a little bit about you and how you got to where you are now.
I'll try to go quick. Started my career in law enforcement at 20 years old. Got on the job, youngest police officer in my department, and I quickly got into undercover work at 21 based on how I looked and where I was from, and I was hooked at that moment. Was undercover for 4 years, eventually got promoted to detective, then sergeant, and then in 2017, or I should say 2014, I got the opportunity to go on the show Big Brother. And I basically told producers that if I went on the show, I would treat it like an undercover operation. And long story short, I went on the show. I was fortunate enough to win. And, you know, you win a lot of money, but the bigger thing was the exposure to the public. And fortunately, they liked me, at least some of them did, and got the opportunity to do a show about OJ, where they were going to fly me out to LA. I was going to work with this private investigator and this forensic psychologist, Dr. Chris Mohandi, and we were going to reinvestigate the OJ case to see if this private investigator who believed OJ was innocent had anything credible there. He had written a whole book on it. So long story short, shocker, OJ did do it, in my opinion. But, you know, it was a good show and it led to other opportunities within Discovery ID. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, the show, which kind of came from OJ, which was called Breaking Homicide, I did that for 2 seasons. We decided to transition to a podcast and worked with ID, called it Crime Weekly, was able to find my co-host, Stephanie Harlow, who's a big true crime YouTuber, and we started doing that show. And then when things started to lighten up a little bit, ID was like, oh, we're going to transition back to linear. We're going to do TV again. And I said, well, I would love to keep the podcast going. I'd like to own that show and take it in the direction we want to take it in. So that's what we did. And we ended up putting Crime Weekly on YouTube as well. We now do 2 shows a week for Crime Weekly. And I also started my own show called Detective Perspective, which is once a week. We cover specifically unsolved cases on that show. And yeah, have a studio here right in Providence, Rhode Island, film right out of the studio. And it's been great. I also have a PI firm where we are still doing the work every day, every week. We mainly focus on genealogy at this point. I have 2 genetic genealogists on staff. And then finally, we have Criminal Coffee. Criminal Coffee is a coffee company where we take a portion of the profits and we fund cold cases that need it, specifically DNA cases. And last year, we actually solved our first case with the funds from Criminal Coffee. It was a 60-year-old case, and we ended up figuring out who it was and reuniting that person with their family. So a lot going on, a lot of irons in the fire, but all connected in the same ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's what I enjoy. I'm 41 years old now, so yeah, I've been doing this since I was 20.
So you're still doing PI work in Providence?
Yep, licensed PI. Our firm is called Break Investigative Group. We don't do the stuff that we used to do back in the day. Like, I never did infidelity cases, but we used to do like workman's compensation claims, things like that. I've kind of gotten away from that because of the opportunities I've had to do other things, but we mainly focus on air searches, surplus searches, wrongful death lawsuits, a little bit higher quality case, in my opinion. We're not out there with our cameras looking for Sally and John to see if they're cheating on their wife. Although there is a space for that, that's not what we're doing. A lot of the times, what we're doing now is we're using that company to, instead of have to pay for it, I do that work pro bono for the criminal coffee cases. So we're able to use the entire funding amount for the lab testing, which can be extremely expensive. It can be about $5,000 per case.
Wow.
So instead of having to pay an investigative genetic genealogist to then take those lab results and do all the back work, I can put it fully towards the lab work, sometimes get it for a little less because we're only asking for the lab work. And then I can have my guys, shout out Jeremy and Ryan, who I think are brilliant, some of the best in the game, take those results and then make those connective dots. And we're working on one right now. I'm not at a point where I can announce anything, but we should have some news relatively soon. The case took a turn in a good way, where it not only was a Jane Doe, but may actually be a crime involved that we're able to connect it to. And that obviously extends out when we can say anything for the sake of the integrity of the case. But yeah, enjoy what we're doing. We're all under one building. Where my studio is, Criminal Coffee is also in that building. Break is in that building. So we're all under one roof.
Well, you got full life, and you're able to attend your daughter's poetry reading.
Poetry Cafe, yeah. Backstory, we were supposed to record this last week. You guys were nice enough to push it off a week because anyone who's a parent out there knows these things come up like that. And the kids are just like, yeah, you can make that, right? It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You don't have anything going on a Friday or whatever day it was. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'll be there, of course. And so I sat there and did the snapping for 2 hours as I listened to 40 kids read their poems. It was amazing.
I love that. You know what? Our motto since leaving NXIVM has been family first.
Yeah, no, and it was great. And you know, it is important to keep that in mind, right? Like family first, because we're all motivated. We all work hard.
Yeah, same. And our audience saw the post that I did about the episode on America's Most Wanted. So let's dig a little deeper into that and the 6 people who went missing after joining what seems like a cult, the University of Cosmic Intelligence. Can you give us a little casual overview of what you put together of UCI and its leader, Rashad Jamal?
Well, UCI, I mean, listen, it's like a lot of cults where they try to separate you from the outside world, right? I mean, in my opinion, this group specifically, they're not big, they're anti-government, they're not big into technology. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, it's their beliefs, but it's also to be the only source of information.
Right.
And so with Rashad Jamal, the interesting thing about him, allegedly, he's the leader of this cult. Or if you're going to call it a cult, we'll call it a group for this conversation.
Sure.
Because they wouldn't call it a cult, right? They never do. He's in prison right now, and he's there for an extended period of time. He's got some crimes involving children. He's a scumbag, in my opinion. So he's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon, but he's still pulling some strings from prison because he has a lot of people who he is very connected with in the outside world. And when it connects to the case that we're discussing, that we discussed on America's Most Wanted, it involved 6 people. It was Naaman Williams, Gerielle German, her 3-year-old son, Ashton Mitchell, Mikayla Thompson, Mikayla Wickerson, and then her 3-year-old daughter, Malaiyah Wickerson, or Malaiyah Wickerson. And to me, we were very surface level on the show. You have to be careful when you're doing it for a bigger network. There's obviously these litigious elements to the show, but these 6 individuals went missing, and we can go into the details of it. I don't know how much you want to do it in chronological order, but although we're looking for 6 people, I believe more than likely it's probably 4 or 5 people who are really in this organization, and then there might be some people who are more enforcers or facilitators of this organization, if you follow what I'm throwing down here.
Yeah, there's the followers and then there's the leaders. And
Correct.
Rashad did say that he doesn't know them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I believe him.
Right.
But also, it is possible that he doesn't know them. He has a huge following. These could be people that are following. It seems to me that following his school group, whatever it is, and then underneath him, he could have sort of like lieutenants? Or what's your theory on who's leading this group, if there is somebody?
So we talked about it on the show. I definitely think that most people are looking to Rashad Jamal. If I'm taking an educated guess based on what we found out in this case, I would say that Naaman is more than likely a higher ranking person in that organization, and he might be facilitating the movement of certain individuals to Atlanta. Why do I think that? There's numerous TikToks, there's numerous videos out there about Jamal. And he has this saying, I am that I am, or am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I am that I am. And with this specific house, and I don't know how much in the weeds we're gonna go, but
Go for it.
There was a situation where I believe, and again, I apologize, we covered this months ago, but there was one of these individuals, I wanna say that it was Mikayla Thompson. So Mikayla's living in this house in Missouri. And Mikayla's doing pretty well. She's got her daughter. They're doing okay. And Mikayla's mom doesn't hear from her for a while. So she decides to go over to her house and check in on her. And when she gets there, there's this other guy that she doesn't recognize who's in this. There's other people living there, but including this male individual who he's got a gun and he's not saying much other than I am that I am. That's what his responses are to Mikayla's mom, the mother of the person who actually owns the apartment or the house that he's staying in, which is odd, which is very odd. And she realizes that there's something more going on here. There's a bunch of random people living in this home. You have what appears to be a bunch of women and one guy. And there are other reports. There are other reports from people in the neighborhood. I think there's even photos of it where this male individual, as well as Mikayla and the other women there as well, are outside doing some type of ritual, kind of looking towards the sun, doing some type of prayer ceremony with the kids out there. And so you fast forward a little bit, and eventually these 6 individuals, they vanish. And there's photos from inside the house when law enforcement gets there. And from the appearance of the photos, it looks like they left in a rush. All of a sudden, there's nobody left behind. They leave multiple pieces of property behind. But on the bathroom mirror, someone writes, I am that I am, on the bathroom mirror. So when you ask the question, how is this connected? Who's pulling the strings? It may not physically be Jamal, but it does seem like at least someone who was in that home is following Jamal's teachings. It may be all of them, but there's obviously a hierarchy. There's obviously a power dynamic. You could speak to this more than I could, Sarah, but it's one of those things where I do think there was someone probably facilitating it, and we could keep going, but I'll stop there as far as where they may be now and what we know about their last whereabouts. But yes, I definitely think it's connected to this group.
But certainly some sort of ideology being imbued into people that are in there carrying it out, sounds like.
Yeah.
I agree.
This podcast wouldn't exist without our fantastic, supportive, generous patrons. Come find us over on Patreon. We're at patreon.com/alittlebitculty. Go there for bonus episodes, exclusive content, and the occasional Zoom with our fan favorites from our past episodes. Subscribe now and join us. That's patreon.com/alittlebitculty. And now, a brief message from our Little Bit Culty sponsors. Remember, when you support our sponsors, you support our podcast. Okay, I love summer. It's great. But in Atlanta, it's like walking around in an infrared sauna. It's super sweaty, especially when you're juggling work, baseball games, travel, kids, and anything outside. Try not to melt in your car. That's why I'm obsessed with MeUndies. Their micromodal fabric is like magic. It's super soft, stretchy, and breathable. It's the only underwear I'll wear when it's 95 degrees out and still want to feel put together. I love their boxers for myself and the high-waisted underwear and bralettes on my gorgeous wife. Mwah, so sexy. They're so flattering and comfortable. And I even got myself a couple of boxers in the fun summer prints. Yes, sassy underneath there. They're tropical and playful, and I absolutely did a little fashion show for Sarah, which was weird. MeUndies has over 20 different styles and 100 prints, and they're all made from sustainably sourced materials with partners who actually treat their workers well. Plus, they've got this awesome problem-free philosophy. If your first pair isn't perfect, they'll make it right. I wear these every day, and you should as well. Right now, as a listener of our show, you can score sizzling summer deals like up to 50% off at MeUndies.com/culty and enter promo code culty. That's MeUndies.com/culty, promo code culty for up to 50% off. MeUndies, comfort that's made for summer.
This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Raise your hand if you've ever drowned in wellness advice, perhaps even from somebody like me. Try a 5-minute cold plunge, write your gratitude lists, log off of screens, sleep upside down. Okay, maybe not that last one. The point is, it's tough to know what's right for you. There's more noise out there now than ever. But what if getting real support, actually that works, was as easy as pressing a button? With BetterHelp, that's totally the case. It's the biggest online therapy platform around, featuring over 34,000 licensed therapists who know their stuff and care about your progress. 5 million people have found guidance here, not just folks working through major stress or trauma, but anyone who wants to lead a happier, more fulfilled life. And it works. Clients have rated their therapist 4.9 out of 5 in live sessions, with results showing that almost 3/4 experience noticeable improvement. And the kicker? Joining is seamless. Video, chat, text, or phone. Therapy fits your schedule, not the other way around. And don't vibe with your therapist? You can switch anytime, easy. So if you're tired of scrolling through wellness hacks and want to cut straight to what's credible, try BetterHelp. Personalized advice, real people, real results, no gimmicks, just growth. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of experience. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/culty. That's betterhelp.com/culty.
You've heard from our sponsors. Now let's get back to A Little Bit Culty, shall we? I feel like you could get like a cult expert, which, you know, we're experts by experience. We're not like PhDs or anything like that. Like, we're not academics.
But that doesn't always, I think experience sometimes matters more than education, right?
Sometimes, depending on who you ask.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah. My line in response to that is like, if you're not cult experts, fine. We're not cult experts, but we're Nexium experts. And
that's true.
What happened in Nexium and the patterns that we see, we certainly see in a lot of other places. And I don't think you need to be an expert to connect those dots.
Agreed.
Maybe in explaining it, but.
I definitely saw a lot of correlations when the journal was presented, when we did America's Most Wanted. And by the way, for our listeners, I thought that was really cool. Maybe you've seen this before, Derrick, when they had that screen in front that we were able to like touch.
Yeah, the
and
teleprompter.
It was like a teleprompter, but also there's like this table with notes of whatever pictures and like journals, and you could like circle it with your finger and it would highlight it. I don't know.
Yeah. It was cool.
Technology was pretty neat.
Little high speed.
Yeah.
Technology.
And I hadn't seen that journal until I was on set. And I felt like we could have done like a 1-hour deep dive just on that journal as a exercise in understanding the kind of thoughts that people have when they're in a cult. I don't have the script the text in front of me, but it was textbook. Like the writing even looked like mine. It was weird. Like you could have taken my journal and that journal and it would have been almost identical in terms of the talk, the self-talk.
Yeah. So different group, same kind of, like Nippy was saying, ideology, where it's they may not know each other personally, but these organizations, they do have a similarity to them, a pattern that you can recognize probably better than a lot of people because you've personally experienced it.
Yeah, they seem to be sort of ritualistic in terms of journals. And then like you said, the neighbor spotted them doing things outside. Those are all things that kind of just wear you down and make you susceptible to influence.
Yeah.
Also, the video we saw of the living conditions seemed pretty
bad.
Pretty bad.
Pretty bad.
Yeah.
They were pretty bad. When you see a group like this, and you can tell that, like Nippy was saying, it's ritualistic, but yet there's no direct connection to the person. This individual, if he's involved, is in prison. So what is it that keeps them there? Is it because of something they're personally, when I say this, they're people in this group, is it something that they're personally feeling like they're missing and they feel like this group provides that for them? Or is it more of a power dynamic where initially they're looking for something, but then it gets to a point where they don't feel like they can leave?
Probably both.
Both.
Yeah. We'd say, and this is actually something we cover in our upcoming book, that every group has a hook. Every group offers something that gets people at a deep core level or a surface level. It could range from personal success and coaching or a deeper yoga practice, or in this case, it seems like a real emotional tie. It seems like these women were struggling with different things, with poverty, with postpartum, lack of community. And then here comes somebody with answers, with, an offer, and also saying that he's a prophet, and specifically an African-American prophet, which I think could be kind of appealing for some women to say, like, oh, here's somebody that, that I relate to, who is showing me a vision of a different kind of world. And it also hooks into like the world that we're in right now, which is there's some crazy stuff happening. And depending on who you are and where you live, could be crazier and scarier. So that might be appealing to them on a core values level as the hook.
What keeps them in?
Oh, keeps them in. Yeah.
So
the keeping in part, you answer
the
that.
question's great because it is multifaceted. So why you would go is a case by case one. So someone might go in and go, oh my God, this journaling, I've never done this before. It totally helped me have a breakthrough here. Journaling's pretty basic.
And not problematic in and of itself, right?
If you've never done it before and it has an effect, you go, oh my God, this works. And then ultimately, as you start to get associated with the group, you start to identify with the group. So then it becomes kind of, you see it in identity politics. I am the belief of the group.
I am that I am.
Right? So it becomes you personally, your personhood is linked to the identity of the group. So if the group is made bad by, say, a parent going, oh my God, this is a little weird, you think they're saying you're weird. And so once you get into the identity politics or the identity of the group, the ideology, that has to be divorced at some point. So then you can be objective about like, hold on, this is just journaling. It's not the person's ideology that made me journal and facilitated the breakthroughs. Me just journaling did it. So I don't have to identify with the group. It's like religion. You can go to religion and like what happened in the service, but you don't have to become a pastor and do everything the pastor says because you haven't linked the scripture to the pastor. And a lot of people just do. And that's why you have 3,000 versions of Christianity.
70,000.
Well, over time, but 3,000 currently active. So, and that's the rub, right? You need to inoculate yourself to not being susceptible to that, although that's very human to be susceptible to that. So you don't want to destroy yourself in a sense of like not getting the good out of something, right? You can still get the good out of something without making it your life, if that helps answer your question.
No, it does. It does. I think that's the mindset that a lot of these guys are in. Because I do wonder from a law enforcement perspective, and Sarah, we talked about this on the show. I don't know if it made the final episode.
I don't think it did. I can't remember.
I think about it from a detective's perspective, and especially when we tie it back to these 6 individuals, if we're fortunate enough to find them as detectives, right? Because they're currently looking for them. There's a warrant out for Mikayla right now for parental kidnapping out of Missouri. And the reason for that warrant is because I believe law enforcement realizes the inherent dangers to these children that are also missing, especially when you consider the fact that the leader, Rashad Jamal, is currently in prison for child molestation, right? So they really want to find these children, and Mikayla took her daughter without the father's permission. So let's say we're lucky enough to find them. Yes, we have the legality to take the child, and at this point, we would have the right to take Mikayla because she has a warrant for her arrest. But let's just say for the sake of this conversation, we did not have the warrant, and we were still able to find them. When you go into that situation, I think from a law enforcement perspective, we have to understand the inner workings of these organizations, these groups.
Yes.
Because when we go to them, we have to define choice, right? Because at some point, they may feel like they're making their own decision, but in reality, they're not. Or do they know they don't have the capabilities of making their own decision and they're looking for help, but they can't be overt about it? As law enforcement officials, we have to know the difference, because if we're lucky enough to find them, we have to not only find the angle of approach that they're going to be receptive to, but do it in a way where we can make sure that they're safe and that everyone else is safe. So understanding what you're saying, Nippy, and knowing the inner workings and how they're thinking and maybe the methodology behind it, I think is advantageous to not only this conversation, but also anybody who may be in law enforcement watching this episode or listening to it, to understand if you find yourself in a case like this, this is something you have to consider when approaching it.
And there's 2 caveats to what you say as well. You are going into it limited by the law and principles that are set up by culture and society, right? Mm-hmm. They're not.
That's
so
true.
They kind of have free range to abuse wherever they are. You have to think, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to think in terms of what I can prove, right?
Yeah.
So you're somewhat restricted by like, okay, I know there's abuse going on, and I know if I make this move here, I can ruin a case, right? So you're somewhat hampered by that. What we had going on in our case, which was working for us, is we had physical evidence of abuse with a brand of scar of someone's initials around the pubic area of women, right? And that allowed people to at least be open to the fact that competent women were emotionally abused and coerced first, right? Oftentimes you don't have the physical evidence on your side to go in and say, hey, this is going on. They obviously didn't choose this or sign up for this. And you can leverage that to go in and facilitate your case. So those cases where the deck is somewhat stacked against you are very difficult. And you, to your point, you have to have law enforcement that goes, you want law enforcement to get to the point where they see it and go, okay, I know what's going on here. It's coercion. Let's get the coercive people out. Let's get that team out. And we're getting to a point where like law enforcement is just getting educated onto it.
Yeah.
Media is a difficult one because medias are sound bites and they want to get it out, and their incentives are to get a salacious story out and not necessarily be nuanced. So I tend to stay away from media because I just don't want to get hogtied by someone trying to get a story. And like you guys said, they just cut something out of something that you felt like was somewhat necessary. Is that right?
We talked, I think, for over an hour and a half, and I think my segment was 10 minutes.
Oh, God. Yeah.
So, there you go. You have to have media. Yeah. You have to have media incentivized to go in and go, oh, it's one of these again. And like the same lawyer that is defending P. Diddy defended Keith Raniere, and
that's our cult leader.
Yeah, the same thing is going on, and they're still having difficulty of like processing it. And obviously, he's powerful, and he can probably pull some legal maneuvers. But still, it's still that education and inoculation by me, because most people in the media, when they're interviewing us, I could tell they were talking down to us.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're like, and I understand that. And I understood that going into it. I knew the optics of it, but they didn't understand coercion. Now, the ones that understood coercion, which ended up doing our documentary, were able to be a little bit more sensitive and go in and give the wisdom that we got, I think, successfully through a documentary. But people aren't sensitive enough to that right now. And obviously you are. But to think that people would choose the situation that they're in, I think is something that people need to really get their heads around and recognize. When they see those symptoms, emotional abuse went on.
Can I just jump in on that?
Please.
When Nippy said people don't choose it, they don't choose what they're in now. Like, I guarantee none of those women, and that's something that a trained officer could ask, is like, is this what you signed up for?
That's what you said to me on the show.
Right. And that, I think, is such a good question, because I guarantee you it's not. People don't choose. I didn't choose to have Keith's initials branded on me. That was not my choice. That information was withheld from me. And 12 years ago, if they'd asked if you want to do a seminar on goal setting and then 12 years later have his initials seared into you, of course I'd say no. Coercion happens slowly over time. And to answer your earlier questions, what keeps people in after they're hooked, there's so many steps that happen. Like usually there's love bombing and it feels really good at first and they've joined something wonderful. All cults are wonderful at first.
And there's journaling and there's stretching in the front yard.
And we're meditating in the sun and we're eating a vegetarian diet and we're saying fuck you to the government and we're bonded in that. And then people on the outside don't understand. So we're cutting them off and we're becoming more and more isolated. And that feels really good because it's like us against the world and nobody gets it. And then maybe there's danger, so we have to go on the run, and like it's kind of exciting, and you know what I mean? Like there could be things that fortify that isolation and keep them in. And then there's also, like we said on the show, if there's a warrant out for their arrest, that's just proof that the outside world doesn't get it, and every reason to hunker down and disappear.
Yeah, and I think that was a great, when I asked you that question on the show, is this what you signed up for? Is this what you originally, and I think that's a great question. It's maybe oversimplifying it, but I think you start there and say, listen, you came here originally with an intention and you thought it was going to be a certain way. Ask yourself, is it what you thought it was going to be? Is the original reason for you coming and being part of this, does that still hold true today? Is this group providing that for you? Or has it become something else? And if the answer is that it's become something else, maybe you need to reconsider if this is really what you need at this point.
Yeah.
I think you have to maybe find a way to not force them into something they don't want to do if they do want to be there, but try to make them see that maybe the position they're in right now is blinding them by what's actually going on. And it is a slippery slope, right? Because
for sure.
Nippy, you said something there that is when you're talking about media, but I think it also applies to law enforcement where you felt like they were talking down to you. And I think the same can be said in law enforcement where if we're talking down to these individuals when we're trying to reach them and break through to them, they may not be as receptive to the information because they're not feeling that respect there with the question. So it's not only about what you say, it's how you say it. And so when I talk to people like yourself and also just other victims of crimes, I always want to understand and try to become more empathetic to what they've went through because it may assist me in future cases, not only as a detective, but just in general as an interviewer. And so I always like to take those little nuggets from people who've personally experienced them on the other side and apply it to my own methodology, my own approach, and what I do.
For more context on what brought us here, check out my memoir. It's called Scarred, the true story of how I escaped NXIVM, the cult that bound my life. I narrate the audio version, and it's also available on Amazon, Audible, and at most bookstores. And now, a brief message from our A Little Bit Culty sponsors. And remember, when you support our sponsors, you're supporting this podcast.
Known fact about me is that I like to escape into games. It's one of my little guilty pleasures. And yes, Sarah does not like it. She tries to correct me, but I press on. That's why I like our new sponsor, Cookie Jam. You know, after a long day of unpacking cult dynamics, gaslighting, and a lot of nonsense, sometimes I just need to decompress. And lately, Cookie Jam has been my go-to brain break. It's a super fun match 3 game with thousands of puzzles, which is my jam, where you match cakes, cookies, and candy. And it's got all these little awesome features, explosive cookie matches, powerful boosters, daily rewards, and a ton of different themes you can switch to depending on your mood. Whether I'm multitasking during a late-night TV binge or avoiding one of those awkward we need to talk texts, Cookie Jam gives me a little escape. Something light, playful, and actually relaxing. Plus, I'm not alone. Over 100 million people are playing, so clearly I'm in good company. For me, it's the perfect way to wind down after a day of thinking too hard about the dark side of human behavior. It's colorful, it's satisfying, and the pandas are kind of cool. Match cakes, cookies, and candy. Thousands of puzzles, free daily rewards, and adorable pandas. What are you waiting for? Download Cookie Jam now.
In the time it takes you to actually board a flight from Group 8,
Now boarding Premier Altitude Elite Club members.
you could have bought a Hyundai on Amazon. Visit HyundaiUSA.com or call 562-314-4603 for more details. Limited availability, pickup through participating Hyundai dealer in select markets.
Break time's over, people. Let's get back to this episode of A Little Bit Culty. It's a good one.
In the question that you ask, too, I would say, like, is this what you signed up for? Even if they're like, yes, and double down in that moment, they're going to have to walk away 30 minutes later when they're not angry or reactive and go, wait a minute.
You might plant a seed.
If you don't
That's
give
it.
them anything.
You just took the words out of my mouth.
Exactly.
You're planting that seed.
Even if you do it gently, you don't use any force, I think most people, and maybe it's optimistic, but I think most people are sensitive enough to go, hey, that guy just asked me a question. He didn't force it on me, or that woman just asked me a question. I'm going to walk away with that. And, you know, I can remember being a kid and just having a question and doubling down in an argument, but walking away going, Like my conscience kicked in for a minute. And that, to your point, it is a seed. And it's the best seed question, I think.
I'm sure that there's a whole training for coercive control that we haven't done, but like that you could probably get and bring your team on to understand it. But just off the top of my head, I think that in regards to what we've learned from like knowing family members who are trying to get loved ones out of a cult, you can't say you're in a cult because that just proves to the people in that you don't get it and that you're just calling it a cult because they don't understand what we know. So I think what Nippy just said, like empathetic, and you said empathy as well, is so important. Asking those questions about what do you do in the group? You don't even have to say it's a cult. It's like, take that word out of it. Like there's some things that can make a group toxic or a leadership or a dynamic toxic. Let's look at some of these things. Like, are you allowed to question the leader? Are you allowed to have a different opinion? What happens if you disagree? Are you allowed to leave? So you can't talk to your family? You're not allowed to talk to your family? Oh, you know, like just ask, like
There should be 5 questions, and we should put a billboard
Maybe
in
we'll make
every
it.
capital city.
We'll make a list. But I was also going to say that thing that Nippy just said, like they can say, yes, this is what I signed up for. That may happen, especially if it's like a religious thing, because one of the things that's sort of built into any spiritual, and Rashad Jamal seems to have created definitely a spiritual community, is that you can, if things don't work out, you can always say, that's the divine plan, or like in fundamentals Christianity, well, God's plan. There's always
He works in mysterious
ways. This is a new test.
Sounds like an asshole to me.
There's always a way out, even with doomsday and prophecy cults. Like if it doesn't happen, it's because like the world is supposed to end. If the world doesn't end, well, that's because we weren't ready. We weren't ready. The new date is 2026.
That was one of the more remarkable things, Derek, that we learned in this whole thing is when a doomsday scenario did not happen, you'd think the followers would go, okay, the gig is up. No, they double down.
Well, I think, but you know what? And I don't want to make this political, but we see it in politics all the time as well.
Yeah, it's
You
extreme.
know, they'll make a prophecy, they'll say something's going to happen, and when it doesn't happen, whether it's for the left or the right, they'll have an excuse as to why it didn't happen. Oh, it didn't happen because of this, or it didn't happen because it's corrupt, and they move the goalpost. They always find a way to manipulate their viewers, their audience, and the worst part is, unfortunately, at that point, the audience buys it. They buy it. They're looking for that excuse. They're like, yep, see, we knew it. We knew it. He's right. Yeah, he's right. It is corrupt. And when you can't explain it with something tangible that you can show and say, this is why it didn't happen, it always goes back to it's some deeper source. It's some deeper organization, some more deep-rooted thing that...
It's a deep state.
It's corrupt at its core, and that's why it didn't happen. So even though you can't explain it, just understand that the higher powers behind the scenes are pulling the strings. And so, yeah, they can always resort back to that and say, hey, that's the reason behind it. But you mentioned Rashad Jamal again, and I think it's important with your audience to let people know that these 6 people, they are missing. And I did pull up my notes because I want to make sure that I get it right, just in case any of your audience happens to be in this area and sees these individuals or hears something that could be advantageous to law enforcement. I want to make sure they know the proper information. So just to kind of go over it one more time, the 6 individuals are Naaman Williams, he's 28, Gerielle German, 26, Gerielle's 3-year-old son, Ashton Mitchell, Mikayla Thompson, who's 23 years old, Mikayla Wickerson, who's 25, and then Mikayla's 3-year-old daughter, Malaiyah Wickerson. And the woman we were talking about earlier, Mikayla's mother, was Cartisha. And the last known whereabouts for these individuals, so they left that house, right? They left the house around, something was going down in March of 2023. And then the last time that they were seen on camera was August 6th, 2023. They were caught on surveillance footage in Florissant, Missouri. This gas station was probably, I don't know, it wasn't far from where Mikayla lived, right? But they're seen on camera and then they go off the reservation. There's no cell phone activity, no credit card usage, nothing. So on the show, we talked about where they could be. Well, obviously they could be somewhere in Missouri, but my hunch is that they're somewhere in Atlanta. Why? Well, to bring it back to Rashad Jamal, he has some court stuff still going on. And from what we were hearing, he was trying to get his supporters to go down to Atlanta to support him, to maybe potentially sway the courts or whatever. So my opinion, based on the limited information we have, is that more than likely, based on where they were last seen, there is a highway there that would lead right down to Atlanta. So it's very possible that these 6 individuals are now somewhere in Atlanta or a surrounding state, because there's no report of their passports being used. So we do not believe they left the country, although we all know it's not impossible to leave the country without a passport. So I just want our viewership here to be aware of that, to understand that's what's important here, because at the core of it all, there are 2 children involved under the age of 3 years old, right? And when you think about their leader and what he's currently in prison for, serving an 18-month sentence, that's concerning. It should be concerning to everyone. And that's why we need to find these people as fast as possible to, at minimum, ensure that they're okay, and more specifically, the children are okay.
100%. I have this really weird hunch that I ran into these women at a park in Atlanta with their kids.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember at that park that we went to? Nippy, don't look at me like that. Remember? And they were all African American, and they were
Where? Which park?
That park. What's it called? That new one with a really good playground, and you could walk around it. That's in West Side.
Oh, West Side Park. Yeah, over the West Side.
Yeah,
It's West Side Park.
And we had a day off.
There it is, West Side Park.
Yeah, West Side Park. Is that what it's called? It's new.
Yeah.
It's not an area we're normally in, and
We were there on Easter.
yeah, but it was a school day for most people, I think. And I just remember.
Easter before they got here, though.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, it was a school day for most people, and our kids did not have school. Maybe it was a Jewish holiday. I don't know. It doesn't matter. The point is that we were there, and our kids, who were white, obviously, were playing with their kids, and they were sharing scooters and playing together. And I just had this moment of like, oh, this is like really lovely. And they were sharing each other's toys and throwing the football or whatever. And I remember chatting with the women and asked if they also had a day off. And she said, no, they homeschool.
Oh, interesting.
And I just got a hit on, there's a certain righteousness and only because I was there, only because I've been there for myself as in a cult and feeling better than everybody else. And I got that from them. Like, no, we homeschool. It's better. Kind of, that's just my intuitive hit. And I don't know. I remember there were at least 3 women and a bunch of kids. So I could be wrong.
Hey, listen, that's the point of covering these cases, right? It's going to take one person to say, hey, I saw him at a park. And also, for anybody who's listening to this on audio, you can Google these individuals, and specifically Naaman. He's got some distinctive tattoos, a TG right in the middle of his forehead. So you may see a woman that resembles one of these women we're discussing today, and then see a male individual who resembles Naaman Williams and go, you know what? I'm onto something. And if that is the case, you don't have to approach him at that point. Let law enforcement know. They can call it in and maybe be a good witness, a good note taker. If there's a vehicle involved, grab a license plate, any distinctive marks that may help track them. That's all you got to do at that point. So again, it goes back to this podcast, America's Most Wanted, Crime Weekly, Detective Perspective, using our platforms to help others, because now you don't necessarily need law enforcement. It's about community, the good kind of community, right?
Yes.
Where we can work together to help solve these cases. We see it every single day where normal people are out there who just have a passion for this and want to do the right thing, are doing things that law enforcement wasn't able to do. And that's what drives me to continue to do the podcast, because I see the power in it. I see what we're doing here, having these conversations. There are people listening to what we're saying right now. They may be going through something in their own lives where they may be contemplating joining a group because they've lost their way or whatever. And hearing you guys speak about it from a firsthand perspective may be a deciding factor for them. You never know. So it's just so important to do what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate your time. And if you ever need a not official cult expert opinion on something, please bring us on. We'd love to chat and keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. I think it'd be great. And I think the more people that know about it, because I'll be honest with you, I know NXIVM from an overall perspective, but I haven't dove into the details of that one. The only case that we've kind of covered that I guess would be cult, even though we were covering it, it would be a cult, but we weren't covering it from that perspective, which was Lori Daybell. But we were more covering it from Chad and Lori, and not necessarily the inner workings of what they were doing, more related to the crimes they were involved in. So yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I'm someone who from a very young age has always been fascinated by the criminal mind. When I was undercover, there were many instances where I had to become the criminal, not in a literal sense, but at least from a mentality standpoint. So understanding how people work is very important to me. It's honestly, I hate to say it, but it's kind of why I was good at Big Brother, right? In Big Brother, for those who aren't familiar with it, you're in a house with 16 other people. They're all strangers, and you're locked inside that house for 100 days without any contact with the outside world. And the way you're successful in that game is understanding your audience, understanding what their motives and their agendas are, so that you can develop your conversation around what incentivizes them. And I feel like there's a lot of similarities and crossovers to law enforcement, to different organizations, both criminal and more religious, this type of nature, which can also be criminal. So it all connects. There's connective tissue amongst it all. And it's, for me personally, it's fascinating.
It is
Absolutely. Maybe next CrimeCon we can do a panel on something. I'm working on the title. I'm working on the title.
Have you guys gone to CrimeCon before?
Yeah, we were actually there for the first time in Nashville. That was our first time.
Yeah, a year ago.
It's a great event. It's a great event. I'll definitely be there. CrimeCon's a great event. It's a great time to get together with like-minded individuals and talk to not only our audiences, but also different individuals and network. So I've met a lot of great people down there, both in the industry and outside the industry. And some of those relationships have become friendships.
Derrick, you're a pleasure to talk to. I hope we stay in touch. And thank you for the work that you do. It's really important. And I'm so glad we got a chance to meet on America's Most Wanted. What a treat.
Absolutely. Hopefully we get to work again soon.
Thanks, Derrick.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you like the show, please consider supporting us by giving us a rating, a review, and subscribe on iTunes. Cults are commonplace now, and we're looking at them all, and every little bit helps. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode.
Thank you so much for being here, Derrick. That was so much fun. We really appreciate your expertise, and we hope this conversation puts the missing 6 on our listeners' radar, especially the kids, Mikayla Wickerson and Ashton Mitchell.
Yeah, it's refreshing to see law enforcement or someone in law enforcement get it and want to get it more, right? So they can understand the victim. So if any of you have any information that may help find them, please call. You can also reach out to your local law enforcement, like Derrick suggested.
We'll put that information in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Please take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time on A Little Bit Culty.
Bye for now.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean. I'm hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production, executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames, in collaboration with Amphibian Media. Our co-creator is Jess Temple-Tardy. Audio engineering by Red Cayman Studios, and our writing and research is done by Emma Deal and Kristen Reeder. Our theme song, Cultivated, is by the artists John Bryant and Nigel Aslin.
I've got 20 minutes till Run Club meets, and it's time for a quick pre-workout snack. Go-Go Squeeze Active Fruit Blend to the rescue. Made with select B vitamins to help release energy, it's an easy, squeezable pouch made to move with me. The taste? So good. And made with real fruit. Even better. Whether I'm hitting the trail or meeting my friends on the court, this is my go-to on-the-go snack. Quick, easy, ready when I am. When it's go time, I go with Go-Go Squeeze Active. Snag yours on your next store run. Search for Go-Go Squeeze on Amazon.